Yeah, please.
Right. Good morning, members, and welcome to the January meeting of the Children, Young People and Lifelong Learning Committee. I won't wish everybody a Happy New Year. It seems to be a long time ago now, so I think we can move forward into 2018. So just to remind members that this meeting will be recorded and subsequently made available to the public for listening purposes. So if we move into the agenda, Claire, Sederunt and apologies.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got 23 members present this morning. I've got apologies from Jeanette Wilson and Robert Fritshley-Simpson, and I've got 3 councillors currently not present: Rob Davison, Ivor Hislop and David Ingalls.
Apologies from David Ingalls and Ivor Hislop.
Okay. So do we have any declarations of interest? No? Okay, so if we can move on to item 3, which is on page 1 of 270, link to the meeting of the 30th of November 2017. Is everybody happy with that? Agreed? Yep. Thank you. So if we can move on to item 4, the Strategic Projects Update. This paper gives the committee an update on the significant investment this council is making in the learning estate in Dalbeattie and Dumfries. The first of the campuses is now open in Dalbeattie, and we will receive a presentation on this today. Officers will also update us on the progress in delivering 3 major projects this year, which support the wider focus on the year of the young person. An important decision this committee must make today is the naming of the new campus in North West Dumfries. It is now key to the successful delivery of the project that we must decide on the name. So we have Claire Renton to speak to this, I think accompanied by... All right. Yeah, sorry about that. So can we agree to accept a presentation on Dalbeattie Learning Campus as detailed in 3.13? Okay. Claire?
Thanks, Chair. Obviously, Dalbeattie is open now, and I thought it would be important for the members that have not been able to go and see the new facility. We've got some drone footage, which I'll put on just now, and then we've got some really nice feedback from the children and the staff, so it's okay, we'll present that. This was the first programme that was funded by the Council and by Scottish Government in terms of Schools of the Future, and it's providing a new campus in Dalbeattie, a co-located campus for nursery, primary and secondary provision along with community facilities. It's the first new learning environment in our region, and hopefully it gives you a sense of our level of ambition and attainment. The campus itself is delivering very highly on low carbon and sustainability as well, and is a much more efficient facility. Hopefully it meets the needs of the learners going forward. So we'll flick that on first. I should say apologies for the talking heads. This is a Graham's video which they've kindly lent us and they've put together for us. Okay, so the audio is not working, but what it is drone footage showing you the campus and the overall spaces going through. Luckily, you're not getting to hear me again. And the architect and the engineers will be speaking against this as well. So looking at the external facilities of Dalbeattie, it's located adjacent to the settlement, providing 3G facilities and running track. John MacDonald was the director who supported us in terms of developing the project, and Mark Ellison's from Holmes Miller, who's the architect who designed the project. And a lot of what we're talking about here is about the engagement with the young people, because very much the children took this project from the very start and said what they liked and didn't like about the project. We did lots of community engagement events, and that was Stephen Heppel coming down to speak to us at the town hall. I think we had about 150 people in that forum. You know, Heppel is internationally renowned and has been giving us really good feedback about how we've actually engaged. The kids that day were just amazing. We had this huge diagram and they were demolishing buildings, placing buildings, but it was really much about them and what they wanted about it, and also about the community. I think one of the sort of key measures of success at the early stages was it was our first major planning application in the region that had no objections, and we had 800 people through a lot of the planning and engagement events. This is the nursery space, so the 2 to 18 agenda's very well taken there. And the team were talking about how we've engaged with the secondary to provide integrated vocational activity there. So it's our first campus that we've built automotive. We have community and learning development in there, and we're looking at working with social services about putting social workers in the campus as well. Obviously the drone footage in terms of the building is not meant to be an architectural monument. The whole importance was about us getting a building that could be easily maintained over the next 40, 50 years, but also about making sure that it was accessible for the community. That's the main central space, because the whole plan of the building is located around an X, and the X allows, you know, the primary wing, nursery wings, secondary wings and community wings. So it allows them all their own identity, but also allows them to come together. So there's also a lot of good opportunities for the community in terms of it's a big conference and banqueting space. Craig Bridges was our development director with Graham's, who work closely in the community benefits. So Graham's have really committed to working with local subcontractors. We've done lots of training and apprenticeships opportunities. A lot of the materials that are in the building in terms of timber, some of the granite chips in terms of using local suppliers. Integrating ASL has been a big item to create little pods and booths, and creating different environments to allow the learners to learn, and obviously the teachers to teach differently. This is the primary wing, so lots of social space integrating throughout the building, so the kids are not just there for sitting in classrooms. They can go out and do project work. We've got science labs, lots of good business studies work, lots of visibility and sustainability throughout the building. So you're looking at the airflow going through the building, lots of fresh air. Karen Coulthard's been fantastic in sustainability. And as I said at the start, we've been mapping some of the projects against the government's low carbon initiative projects, and this campus has beaten anything that was actually funded for low carbon. Really simple, low-level structure. We've wrapped the slate around the top to reduce the weight of the structure. And we've used brick on the outside. Again, it's for maintenance purposes, because it's not just about building over 2 years, it's about saying that building's going to be there for 50 years, and we want it to look as good as what it did at day one. There's lots of good engagement with the teacher staff. They were heavily involved in the development of the site, and so have the children. We've got a video of the primary age kids, and we've got a video of the teachers as well. So what we'll do is I'll get Tracy in after this to see if she can get the audio sorted out on it, because we have set up speakers on it. I'm not quite sure it's working at the moment. And what else are we talking about? So we've got the running track, and we've got the 3G pitch as well, which is the first for the area because Stewartry didn't have that. We've got technical facilities in it, and we've got lots of space, because a big thing, particularly around the 6-year children, was about they didn't feel like they had any identity or any space, you know, for enterprising for their own space in the building. So we really pushed that. At the moment, we're putting the building up for a number of awards in terms of community engagement, sustainability, and education buildings, because we really do feel like we've got something special here. We've had Scottish Futures Trust down, so that's Stephen Long, and everybody's really excited about what we've produced and using it as a best model. That's the automotive facility, and again, that's really exciting, not only just to get children engaged in vocational and stewardship, but also to work across the cluster, so working heavily with Kirkcudbright and Castle Douglas. So Castle Douglas is delivering on construction, health and beauty, and the Dalbeattie campus is going to do rural skills, automotive, and it's going to do hospitality as well, so good hospitality suites. There's lots of arts facilities in there, a lot of creative items. The local sailing club have donated a boat into the playground, and we've also got climbing walls as well for the children to do traversing both at nursery level. Really good PE facilities that not only can get used by the school but get used for national events, and obviously the rugby and the football pitches as well. So it's not just about the learning environment, it's about the community environment, a proper community campus regenerating outside of Dalbeattie. So that's just an overview of that. I'll get Tracy to sort out the sound on this. Okay.
This building is open.
No, right, let's jump on to the next one. You don't need to hear that again.
It's spacious. It gives pupils freedom to move about.
The fact that you've got a kind of garage in your school is just fantastic. Our learning environment is state of the art. What's wonderful is to see them in the pods, and those pods are an absolute wonderful feature of this new build because they've been used so flexibly right from the get-go. You make your way into the building, you can already sort of see that it is a more professional environment. Your mindset sort of changes as soon as you walk in.
My favourite aspect, I think, is just the joint working that we're going to be able to achieve. We can see that happening and starting already.
But what I really like about this room is how much light there is in the room and how that just generally helps your own well-being. Being able to manoeuvre yourself around desks, to actually be able to be at the side or in front of a pupil, to have those one-to-one learning conversations is crucial.
They have got a campus, I would say, second to none.
Okay, and we'll just hear from the children as well, because they've been very honest, as they always are, in their feedback.
I like the fact that the teacher.
Okay, so hopefully that gives you a good sort of overview of the project and the initial feedback. Obviously, the whole work doesn't stop now. You know, this is just the start of it. The investment is there, and now we're working with education and the school communities to make sure the community get the best of it, but obviously we make a difference to every learner. You know, we've also spoken with the current learners because obviously they've got a legacy in terms of they've designed and taken over this building, but they've got a legacy in terms of passing over to the next generation coming through. So it's about making maximum impact with the investment that we've been given. So happy to take any questions or queries on that before I go on to the next item.
Thanks, Claire. Just to say, I think we went down, was it the day the school opened or the day after? And the youngsters had settled in so brilliant. You thought they'd been in there for years. And as one of the youngsters said in the presentation, the teachers did seem very happy about their new school. So that makes it easier for everybody concerned at the end of the day. And I would really encourage people, if they get the opportunity, to actually go and have a look at the school, because it is a spectacular, not just an educational facility, but a community facility as well, which is what we intended all along, is that these should be community facilities rather than just educational facilities. So do you have any questions? Comments? Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, fantastic facility. It looks marvellous. Going forward, at the moment, can I ask, once the school day finishes, what's happening to the building in the evenings and things? Is there anything happening at the moment? And, you know, as we move to the future, how do you envisage, you know, out with the core hours of the school, how's it going to work?
Absolutely, great question. So there is a certain amount of activity that's already happening that's really been transferred from the existing schools. So that's a lot around the community sports hub. So that's working quite well, but I think that can be built on. But what we are doing is meeting with the facilities provider and the school regularly to look at other opportunities. So that could be adult learning, it could be engaging with parents out of school hours. You know, we're obviously developing on the 11:40 hours as well. So there's a lot of items and it's got a lot of potential, but that's why we can't just stop now. It's just not about the building, it's about actually maximising it now. We've got to promote, we've got to advertise, we've got to work with local community groups, working with the ward officer to really, to encourage that use and to probably spark seeds of imagination as well about what's possible.
Are there any links being made with the local colleges in terms of using the campus? Can I ask?
So that's happening already in the college. We're involved in the planning aspect because what was important was, you know, trying to get every child the same experience across the region. So obviously it's not viable to get a child as easily up to the college campus as it is in Dumfries. So there's college lecturers actually going out and delivering subjects like psychology within Dalbeattie at the moment and looking at things like automotive to say, right, okay, or hospitality, we can deliver year 1, 2, 3 in the Dalbeattie campus and working with them to say that the child can go on for the 4th year at the college campus. So that's already active.
Can I just say, Jeff, the feedback for the public when they had the open night was absolutely brilliant, old and young. The community use is good, but at the hub, the Dalbeattie Sports Hub last week, we still haven't got the fitness suite up and running for the community use because they haven't got an instructor. And I think that is a big problem because there is a desire within the public that will be able to get it up and running.
Colin?
Thanks, Chair. I suppose just to add, what I think is really encouraging is this isn't something that's there in isolation. This committee and the council's given tremendous support to the delivery of this school. But of course, it's the way we go about things now in Dumfries and Galloway in terms of delivering. Many of the same architects, for example, are involved in North West Campus or whatever that school's going to be called. And indeed, a lot of the same ways that we've gone about working with the young people and the staff have been encouraged for future development. So I think overall, it's great to see it working on the ground, good feedback, but it's a precursor to good things to come.
Rob?
Thank you, Chairman. Really just an observation. I think you always expect there to be some snagging and some bits and pieces when you've got a very large building, a large complicated building brought into use. I guess what's been very reassuring is that there haven't really been very many of those at all. There's been very limited minor issues. And actually you've got a large complicated building completed on time and on budget and a fairly swift migration across. Which basically went very well. I think there are maybe one or two things that we can improve on, obviously, when we look towards St Joe's. But as an exercise, I think it actually has gone very well, and the building is working very effectively. And I obviously always have to declare an interest in this because my children go to it, and they think it's fantastic, which I think is probably they're the sternest critics, but they are incredibly enthusiastic about the building and thoroughly enjoying it.
Richard, do you want to come?
Thank you, Chair. Just to give Councillor Stitt some assurance that there's some discussions ongoing between the Leisure and Sport team and the school directly in regard to fitness instruction, and we'll address that as a matter of urgency.
Thanks, Richard. Claire?
I think the point you make on quality is actually quite important, and I think it's important for this committee to be reassured about the importance of quality, particularly in terms of the wider context, that it's been something we've all been focused on, and nationally we've had really good feedback about the level of quality and the level of snagging of this building. So we had maybe 200 points in our snagging list. Some buildings have 40,000 points on their snagging list, and we are working with the school. The other thing that's really important now is, again, as Councillor Davidson mentioned, is lessons learned. So we're staging a lessons learned workshop where everybody that's involved, because we can always do better and we can always learn, and the other campuses should benefit from that. The other aspect, and again, elected members should be reassured, is we're working on the health and safety information. So that's the formal information that we are required to have in place to make sure that we can run and manage this building effectively. So that's getting put in place as well.
Thanks, Claire. No more. Oh, David?
Sorry, Chair, but it's just on the health and safety. There's a chart at 3.7.4 where the Bridge and Dumfries, Dalbeattie Learning Campus have got 40 points, St Joe's have got 39, and North West Campus has got 35. Can you explain the differences, please?
Okay, so that refers to a national programme called the Considerate Contractor Scheme. So the contractor registers with that and the site's registered with that and they get inspected. But that covers health and safety, but it covers about community engagement. It's the quality of the site presentation. So it's marked out of 50 and they get 10 marks for each section. And there's sections on community benefits, health and safety, innovation, creativity. So anything between 30 and 40 is good in terms of the running a good site. When you're going for 40 and above, then you're really starting to get into the really different, to get those marks, it's got to be sector leading and nobody else is doing it. And certainly Graham's, I want to see those marks go higher, and Graham's are charged to do that.
Ross?
Sorry. I'd just like to say thank you very much for an inspirational presentation. And one of the things I noticed about the school particularly was the way it was designed regarding anti-bullying strategies. Particularly the toilets are designed in a way that they're private but open. And I think to have that amount of attention brought to the problem of bullying in schools is fantastic and something that we need to aspire to.
Okay. Right, so moving on to the second recommendation, which is to Note the moving date of moving learners and staff out of the new buildings for St Joseph's College to Easter 2018 is detailed in 3.21. Is everyone happy to agree that on the basis of the information given in the report? Yep. Okay, thank you. And 2.3, can I agree to accept a presentation regarding the name of the new Northwest campus? Agreed? Right. Claire?
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Committee. So for members that haven't been involved, the Northwest Campus is one of the next projects in the programme. The Northwest Campus is around the co-location of 2 nurseries, 2 primary schools and a secondary school in Northwest Dumfries. We went through an extensive process to look at the formal closing of those schools to create one new school. And that was very important about uniting that community, bringing it together and setting a level of ambition and aspiration for the future, you know, a sort of a blank canvas going forward. So that's been the work of the last 3 or 4 years, and it's really building on what we've delivered at Dalbeattie. You know, it's the same model of building, and it has been developed to meet the needs of that locale. We're at the stage where we're on site, and the project is due to finish for summer this year. The site selection was a long process as well, and it was about bringing a heart back to the Northwest Dumfries, regenerating Northwest Dumfries and making sure that people and the learners feel valued within that community. The site is close to the bypass, so it's visible and it's accessible, and it's about encouraging learners to want to be part and to want to learn in that community, and for wider community access and community groups. So this committee took the decision to co-locate the library in there and obviously benefit from the extensive work on sports as well. So there's really good external facilities that will provide a national opportunity for our young people. We've got our new head teacher in place, Sederunt, who's sitting with us today. So we've got a new leader of learning for that site and working closely with her to make sure all her aspirations are delivered within that campus, and also benefit from lessons learnt at Dalbeattie as well in terms of taking that forward. We're also co-locating Langlands, which is our regional facility for children with severe and complex needs at secondary level, and we already have well-established learning centres at the primaries and the secondary, which will also go into that new campus. So for children with complex and additional needs, there'll be a really good facility there as well. So that's the campus, that's where we're going. You know, we're quite well into the programme now, and everybody who's passing that way will see it coming out the ground, and it's looking really good. You know, you'll see familiarity of what you saw in Dalbeattie, but with that sort of the bespokeness in terms of what the Northwest is. Part of that and part of all our campuses is not just about building something, it's about that change management process in terms of we've got a new head teacher, a new management structure, we're working on that, and making sure that we're not just doing what we've always done, but actually taking forward a new level of ambition. And we've sort of mapped, again, sort of used Graham's nicely to say, look, we need to try and sort of capture what we're trying to do. And we've created this sort of tree analogy in terms of, you know, it's the roots from the community that are really supporting and nurturing the children. You know, you're bringing them together in terms of what's your ambition for them, and then going into the branches in terms of success and aspiration and everything that goes in about that. And in commensurate of that, it's really important that we, you know, we confirm the identity of this new campus. Now, it is challenging because we're working with a very diverse community. We're bringing lots of groups together, and we desperately want people to own it and feel part of it. We have been engaging in it with our ward officer and with our schools to try and get, you know, a name. And it's about, we've got the overall campus, and then we've got all these services that are getting delivered under it. We'll have nursery accommodation, we'll have primary, we'll have secondary, we'll have community facilities, we'll have sports facilities, and we'll have library. But we're really needing that strap line, that overall identity brought in. Now, you know, as the local people know, that's been, you know, quite a lot of work. A lot of names have been suggested. We've gone out for various engagement sessions, but we've never really got to something that's been an outright clear identity for the new campus. So what we have done is we've worked with local ward members, and we've engaged with the chair and vice chair to say, look, we're really at quite a critical stage in this project now. Both, you know, we're starting to look at decorations, finishes, we're starting to look at the graphics to the front, so we really need to know what this campus is called. We're also at the stage in Derris working with the schools, because people need to order school uniform. We need to know what the logos are going to be, and we need that guidance from you to actually take this forward. So as I said, we met with local ward members recently, and the chair and vice chair, to say, a bit like the Dalbeattie Learning Campus, that's adopted that name because it seemed to be the right thing. We're also looking for the same for the North West. Now, what we discussed and the clear guidance we got from local ward members was around bringing everybody together, because it's not just the schools that are going into the campus, but we have schools that sit around that, likely including as well. So what is a common name that could be adopted by everybody? Now, the preference from those conversations is around the North West Community Campus, capturing the North West, capturing the community aspect and keeping it really simple, but acknowledging that there will be services delivered under that could still be developed. The library could have its own name, its own identity. So what we're asking today is for members to consider that and hopefully be able to make a decision on it. We did work up some sort of visuals in terms of, well, if it was a North West Community Campus, what could that look like? What could that feel like in terms of aspiration? In terms of the North West, Dara's been working up in terms of her creative thinking about North West direction, travel, sense of directing children, where their future's going to be, and that sense of aspiration of directing them towards, that star, that metaphor, and then working on that. So that could potentially be forward in terms of engaging people, giving them sort of identity and ownership. And if committee were able to make a decision today and give us some guidance, then what we'd do is work with the schools and the community in detail to develop that strapline, which would be the North West Community Campus, get the identities for the services underneath it, and then develop, the logos, the school motto, everything on it. So it's quite an important point, and it is quite key at this time in the project because we are 6 months to completion. So that's the summary of everything to date. That's what we're looking for, and that's some of our thoughts on how that could get taken forward. Happy to answer any questions on that.
Thanks, Claire. Members? Ronnie?
Yeah, thanks, Claire, and thanks for all the work you've been doing on this. I know it's not been easy, but the campus itself is actually looking fantastic, and I think if Dumfries is anything to go by, I think it'll be a really positive influence in the area. And as you said, the communities have gathered together. They have actually starting to take a kind of ownership within that, and that's exactly the kind of ethos we wanted to put forward in that. And I think that name, North West Community Campus, actually encapsulates that, because it's not just about one part, it's about all the other parts, and the identity is common ground, if you want, within that. So yes, I'm very pleased with that.
Thanks, Ronnie.
Thanks, Chair. I concur with what Councillor Nicholson's just said. I don't think community was ever considered, to be honest with you, as part of the title, but I think it's more encompassing, just as Claire said. It brings everybody together. It's not just for learning, and people can identify with the other activities that will be going on and available in the centre. So, no, I think you did a pretty good job, Claire. In fact, as Ronnie says, thanks to yourself and all your staff for the work that's been done over the piece and the contractors on site as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you, David. Anyone else? So are we happy with the proposed name of North West Community Campus? Dumfries. Because I do think it is, to reiterate what I said earlier about the Dalbeattie campus, it is important that these are community facilities. They're not just schools, they are community facilities. So happy with that? Yep. Okay. So that gives you something to work on now, Claire. And 2.3, can we agree to accept a presentation regarding the naming of the new Northwest Campus? We've done that, right? So, make a decision on the name, we've done that. And 2.5, can we note the projects are all currently delivery to the programme and cost parameters and the next steps in the project delivery. Is anybody happy with that? Yeah. Okay, thanks very much. So if we move on to Item 5, which is on page 17, Early Learning and Childcare Planning for the Expansion towards 1140 hours by 2020-21. This is an update, a regular update, which comes to every SIPL meeting. This is the January 2018 one. So, as we plan for the expansion of 1140 hours, we know there are challenges ahead. The paper provides a national and local update of the expansion to 1140 hours. Nationally, there are challenges as funding is yet to be confirmed for 2018-19 for both revenue and capital. We also are required to procure services for early learning and childcare. Locally, implementation plans are subject to confirmation of the funding package. A further financial template is required to be submitted by all councils to the Scottish Government on 2nd of March, which will inform national decisions on funding allocations, and further discussions are taking place with COSLA. This paper gives an update on the open book review with the PVI sector as agreed at the September committee. The paper recognises there needs to be an uplift of the hourly rate paid to providers as we implement the 1140 hours expansion. However, further work is required to be undertaken to establish this rate. The paper also gives an update on capital investment across the region and seeks agreement to engage with the community and ward members in Stranraer to further explore options to deliver 1140 hours in related capital investment. And we have Liz Baxter to answer any questions and I think to provide an update on what's happened since the papers came out. So Liz.
As you pointed out, that the situation is changing almost on a daily basis with the government. We officers attended meetings with the government last Friday where we were expecting to get an update on the budget, in which we did, but we still don't have an agreement on the budget. So therefore, we can't really fully make plans as we move forward with the expansion of 1140 until we receive that information. There still is the commitment to extending the entitlement from 600 hours to 1140 hours by 2021. The draft budget allocated of 76.3 million of revenue funding to councils for this year, of which only 52.2 million is new funding, and we await information on what is our allocation of that funding and our distribution of that funding. The draft budget also allocated 150 million of capital funding to councils for 2018-19. And again, we are expecting information on how this will be distributed in April. Further meetings and discussions are taking place, and we were advised on Friday that by May of this year, we should expect an indication of multi-year funding from 19 to the year 2021. So therefore, all planning and implementation is subject to that to confirming that funding allocation. As Jeff said, we do have to submit another financial template so that they can decide what that funding will be for the multi-year funding. We were also advised that the Scottish Government will provide up to 50 million by 2020 to support the living wage. And we were also advised that the Barclay Review has confirmed a new non-domestic rate relief for day nurseries, which will be introduced in April. So locally, phase 1, early access to 1140 is almost complete because we were using the funding that we knew we were getting for this financial year. Uptake has been very positive, with 84% of registered children taking more than their 600 hours and 45% of registered children taking their full entitlement to early access of 1140. So very positive uptake. We will have to make amendments to phase 2, subject to confirmation of the funding, but we have been advised by the Scottish Government, all councils have, to make adjustments to that funding, what we were expecting to get. At the same time, locally, we need to procure services. The council are required to procure services to comply with EU and national regulations. We've already held those supplier engagement sessions with our procurement team in March and December, and we need to award those contracts prior to nursery enrolment in April. We also undertook the open book review, which the paper identifies, and that was agreed at committee, and it was undertaken with the PVI sector, and there's a comprehensive appendix in the paper, which Jim will take us through that. And also in the paper is an update
of the capital programme, which Lauren will take us through, and then we will answer any questions.
Jim, do you want to?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, as Liz said, after September, I think, committee, we agreed that we would open the council's books to the PBI sector and make a request that we would also get access to the sector's books so we could look at the issues about sustainability and any revisions that would be required to the hourly rate that's currently paid to the sector. Under section 3.3, you'll see under 3.3.2, and it's also picked up in the appendix as well, that within Dumfries we actually have got quite a blended provision between the council and the PBI sector. We have something like a 60-40 split. If you look nationally, most other councils have got a higher percentage of nursery provision within the council sector itself. So the council is heavily reliant upon the PBI sector, or is quite reliant on the PBI sector, and actually supports the sector by we provide our early years settings, do core hours only. We don't offer wraparound to families, and families will access that through the PBI sector. It would be charged for by the council. It's not as if we do that free of charge. We need to charge for it. But that gives the PBI sector the opportunity to attract business that keeps them sustainable and viable. Under the appendix, we also highlight the appendix to the report in Table 3 also highlights the kind of payment rates that are made by different local authorities for their private provision. And you'll see there that within the list of local authorities, we currently pay £4.1 an hour for 3 and 4 year old provision, and you'll see the rest of the councils noted in there. And it was mentioned in the last council that some councils like Gale and Butte and other rural councils paying maybe a higher rate, but there's a whole stack of councils that there's quite a variation in the amount that's paid. And the 3 to 4 year olds, that was up to a previous committee to pay £4.58, and that is kind of broadly in line with the Scottish average. But one of the issues that the paper does highlight, and it's in appendixes 3 and 4 and 5, is the unit cost of providing local authority nurseries. They're kind of big bone of contention with the PBI sector, where you will see under the table, I think it's table 4, it's like, sorry, my apologies, table 5 will give you like a descending rate of the cost of local authority provision. And what that does highlight is that in some of the smaller nurseries, the actual amount it costs per hour to run that nursery is significantly more than what we would currently pay the PBI sector. Now, I would say quite often they're not operating in those areas because it's small and it's rural. But within so across the council nurseries, there's quite a disparity in a broad range of costs. And the PBI sector, and this was shared with them, were highlighting the fact that we were paying £5.70 an hour and they were getting paid £4 an hour for that. So, but nonetheless, it was shared openly, and highlighting that certain nurseries have got higher costs than other nurseries, and what it costs to provide local authority nurseries. And what I would say is that that's common across. We looked at the national benchmarks as well. So across Scotland, councils are going to cost about £5.20, £5.40 on average for their nurseries. Obviously, there'll be ranges within that depending where the nursery is. Is it a rural nursery? Is it a busy urban nursery? The other point that's highlighted in the paper in terms of, and I'm sorry to skip this earlier bit, but under the summary under 3.323 is the disparity between the sector pay rates, where the local authority pay their staff much more than the PBI sector. And again, this was highlighted by the PBI sector as something they were concerned about in terms of the potential, and that explains primarily why council costs are so much higher, because the staff are paid significantly more in the PBI sector. This hadn't been shared before with the PBI sector, and we were quite open to say, look, we understand your challenges. This is what it's currently paid at the top of the scale. And they welcomed that sharing of the information, but they were also expressing concern about the potential migration of staff from the PBI sector to the council sector as and when provision is expanded. So that's something that we need to be mindful of. We need to work with the work nationally as well as locally to see how that could possibly be mitigated. If I take you briefly to the analysis of the different sectors and what we're able to get, within the under 3.3.9 and in the appendix, it will also detail it under table 7 and 8, I think it is. Then what we had in there was the voluntary sector where we were able to access their accounts through OSCAR, the charity regulator, because they have to publish their accounts as a kind of public body and to be transparent. And what we were able to identify from that is that the average cost of delivery of the voluntary sector, we worked out at roughly £4 per hour. So that was in line with what the council was actually paying the voluntary sector. So it wasn't making any money off the council paying £4 an hour. They were costing them £4 an hour. At the same time, the accounts were reporting a profit, and what they explained, and we had a session with the voluntary sector, was that they were reliant upon external fundraising activity to allow them to generate profits from their business. They also expressed the view that that was placed pressures upon them in terms of the sustainability. Well, the staff are paid significantly less than the council staff, but nonetheless, if one was to look at most of that sector is operating at a profit, though a small profit. The level of reserves that the sector is carrying is quite significant. You'll see the 19 accounts were highlighting reserves of £700,000, recognising that can sometimes be needed for redundancy and restructuring if that was needed. However, the current rate of profit would suggest that the sector itself has got enough reserves to be viewed as sustainable and has got profitability, subject to the caveats I was mentioning there around the need to rely on external fundraising. In terms of the private sector, we have got some information back from the sector, but the sector wasn't prepared to share. The representatives were saying we don't want to submit the profit and loss accounts. They gave us, we got 5 returns in from the providers. That was less than a third from the 18 providers. They were, I was thinking that the representation which is outlined in the paper was that the 2 or 3 main concerns for them. One be the staff recruitment and retention and the transfer over to the council sector, understandable. The second thing was the potential for the loss of the wraparound income when the council rolls out 1140 into that sector. So, well, they're currently getting £5 an hour from a parent. If we roll out 1140 provision, then we'd be paying a substitute rate for what a parent currently pays. So the parent wouldn't be paying the 540 hours extra. The council would be paying that 540 hours on the parent's behalf. And obviously they would be concerned if they were getting £5 an hour or whatever from a parent just now. If we weren't matching that, then they would be out of pocket. But what we have said to the sector, and we met with the representative, well, a broad representation of the PBI sector last week, is that we are keen to work with them to actually establish what the impact will be upon their business, but we need an evidence base in which to do that. Nationally, the Scottish Government is saying that it will support councils to pay a sustainable rate to both the private and the voluntary sector. It's not determining what that rate will be, but it's saying to councils, you need to recognise that there will be pressures on the voluntary and the private sector when 1140 is rolled out, and the funding that we give you to deliver 1140, we expect you to recognise that in your funding arrangements with the PBI sector. What I would say, the table that I showed you, the league table of councils that are paying £4.58 down to £3.30 or whatever, if you look at that table in 3 years' time, you'd expect to see that table all be lifted up, because all the councils will have to deal with what we're dealing with, which is how do you keep a PBI sector vibrant and sustainable whilst balancing that, the need to keep the council's books sustainable and viable. So we have had that conversation with the PBI sector, but it's fair to say that the representation back was, well, that's all well and good, but we would like to see a compensation just now. We don't feel £4.01 is enough. And we've been unable to give well, as officers we can't do that, but we can only able to say that we hear what you're saying. We will need to increase the rate. We will need to work with you to allow us to establish that, and encouraging them to continue to do that work with us. And hopefully that gives a fair representation to what the sector itself was paid. And so as a final point about the living wage was also mentioned by the PBI sector. There are real concerns about council asking them to pay the living wage to their staff and then us not compensating them for the higher cost they would have. And again, that's been recognised. Liz mentioned £50 million nationally to support councils to deliver that. And again, that's something that they were looking for guarantees that that the sector would be compensated for increased costs if we pass that increased cost onto them through our requirements for living wage or to offer 1140 hours free funded entitlement to parents. So I hope that gives a fair representation to what was fed back through our engagement sessions, and I think it's over to Lauren now to discuss the capital.
Thanks, Jim.
I think starting at the national picture, through all the service delivery plans that have been submitted through submission 1 to the Scottish Government, the total capital requirement at that point was around £742 million, whereas the allocated amount of money available was £430 million. So there's a substantial difference in those two values. With that in mind, authorities were charged to revise the submission, the first submission, bearing in mind the planning assumptions within the blueprint that the government have laid out. The most critical one in that is making use of existing assets that are within the local authority. There's been further clarity added around what that means on the 25th of January, a letter from the government that added 5 criteria around what the capital could be used for and 6 bits of criteria that the capital couldn't be used for. Now that's allowed us to refocus on what our submission looks like. We've also revised numbers in the background about what our capacity deficit is across the authority based on looking at a move from historic average numbers of children, because that had the potential of counting children in 2 settings, so they were double counted. We've moved towards a snapshot in time from the electronic NAMS system that it may miss a couple of children because they're off that day from illness or for whatever reason, but it did show a difference in the numbers, which again influenced the capacity deficit. Another element that has revised the numbers is around the 15% flexibility that the government were looking to have built into the delivery plan. Local authority assumptions at the time were around that meant having capacity at 115%. What the clarity has brought is that actually meant the availability for parents, carers, to have an hour extra every day if they so chose. So adding that extra hour up a day does come to 15% on top of the 1140. So whilst the 15% flexibility remains, it doesn't mean you need 15% more physical capacity. So that's reduced the amount of capital requirement required. Within the paper, we go through the different areas across the authority, stating what the demand is. Now, there are a lot of locations where there's minimal investment required. They're just simply around using existing assets and changing the care inspectorate variations to allow us to have more children in that setting. It may mean an additional toilet to allow the ratios to work more effectively, or it may mean a slight change to an existing space where there's minimal capital requirement. So there's not a lot of reference made to that, but if members would like that clarity, I can provide that. The areas really where we're looking at a higher level of capital investment, firstly is Canonby. Canonby is a small nursery that doesn't have the capabilities to cater for 2-year-olds, for eligible 2-year-olds, and it's also a space that has a registered number of children that doesn't marry up to the floor space. So there's grandfather rights for around how that space was utilised historically. So any change there would require us to meet the new regulations. So for making that available to eligible 2-year-olds, there are other implications for that. Moving across the authority, Spring Home, or more accurately, the Castle Douglas cluster has a deficit that can't be provided through existing assets or by purchasing additional hours. So there's a requirement to use what space we have. Spring Home has been identified as a school that has physical capacity within the building. There's a classroom that can be utilised there. In all these cases, we've looked at the projected roles, the future pupil numbers in all of the establishments, and we know that there's a high probability that by removing the classroom, the school is still sustainable to those level of numbers. So that the Spring Home solution would be looking at utilising one of the classrooms in the school, some of the other associated spaces, and part of the forest experience in the externals as well. The Newton Stewart area has, well, in Newton Stewart itself, there are 2 providers. There's the local authority operating out of Penningham, the new facility that was established there for the 600 hours, and there's a voluntary provider operating out of Minigaff school itself. Penningham being a new facility, doesn't really have the ability to expand its numbers, so the logical solution is to look at Minigaff. The voluntary provider already operates out of one of the classrooms there. The design of the building allows the numbers to increase within a design that almost mirrors what we would be looking for if it was a new solution. It does mean displacing the school by one classroom, and there would be a level of extension work to the school to allow that to happen. Sticking within the same cluster, the other identified location is Wigtown Primary School. It does have capacity for its existing 600 hours provision. Moving forward to 1140, some of those children would be displaced. So there is a requirement to expand that facility. The school has a classroom, again, that's underutilised within the building. It's the other associated spaces. So whilst we can take advantage of the existing classroom and prove value for money and follow the blueprint, it needs a little bit further investment to allow the other associated spaces like laundry rooms, office space, toilet facilities to allow it to work to the 1140 hours provision. And the last area where there is an identified capacity deficit is Stranraer. Now that deficit has changed significantly over the course of the submissions into the Scottish Government with the reasons stated previously. Originally we were looking around a deficit of about 80 places. That's now down to between 20, 24. So there's a significant change in there. So the recommendation in the paper is to allow officers to take a bit longer to look at what the solutions could be within the area. And working with the voluntary provider at Busy Bees and any potential childminders that are coming forward to make that an informed decision that we'd bring back to committee at a later date. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate there's been a lot of detail in there, but I think this is such an important thing. We need to get it absolutely right. And I do appreciate the amount of work which officers have put into drawing up the hugely complicated paperwork behind all of this, as well as the inspection. So I'll throw it open to members. David?
Hi, thanks, Chair. Just I was looking at table 8, and there's 5 groups there who haven't got a profit of £10,000 in a year. Now, I didn't expect you to be able to answer it, but I would assume that these facilities would be struggling to meet redundancy payments for their staff if they had to close down. And to me, that's quite concerning that they're under £10,000. And we talk about upgrading facilities and whatnot, and the money you're getting for that. What we've also got to remember is the Care Commission have their standards as well. And I can remember where a childcare provision stopped operating and another group took over, and it took them a year to get that facility up to the new standards of the Care Commission. So there's big issues there as well. And the capital funding you're getting, is any of that going to be available to the voluntary sector? Thanks, Chair.
Lauren?
Thanks, Chair. I think the critical part at this moment in time is that we actually don't have confirmation of what funding we're getting for capital from the government. And until that's established, we don't know whether we'll have enough to deliver what our existing plan is. I think what we need to be clear on is the update that came from the government. It does state that there are opportunities to provide grant funding as long as we comply with the state aid rules. So the first test is, do we need capacity in that area? And if we do need capacity in that area, can we fill that capacity with our own existing assets? And if we can't, we then need to look at the second point of the blueprint. Can we purchase additional hours? And if we can't, then we need to look at the third point, which is, do we need to establish a new facility? Now, whether that's local authority facility or whether that's supporting the private or the voluntary, that would be around the business case and around the model and around whoever that establishment is coming forward with saying this is the capacity that we can provide. Now, there's a lot of work still to be done on that area. I think we can't rule it out, but there's still a few unknowns first that we need to cross off before we get to that point.
Thanks, Chair. That was very helpful. Thank you.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to get some clarification. On page 32, the unit cost of the local authorities is 1617. Now, you actually mentioned Penningham Nursery there as one of the new facilities, and I understand that Penningham's been part of the trial for increased hours. The rate that's there, is that included in the year 16-17? Is that included the trial rates? Because obviously there'll be increased costs with the increased hours provided. And equally, just on the same point, you mentioned that it doesn't have capacity, but it's a newly built facility. Can I ask why we didn't build a bigger facility, looking at the projected numbers? Because, my understanding is we look at the 5 years of numbers coming in, and having built a new facility and it not being big enough does seem slight short of insight. Sorry.
If I can answer the easy question, which is the 16-17 doesn't include the trial phase, so that's purely the pre-1140 work at the facility, and obviously those costs will be changing this year and as the trial comes on stream. Lauren's got a more difficult question.
It's an easy answer. The funding that was available for the 600 hours paid for Penningham, 1140 wasn't announced at the time that it was implemented, and it was actually probably completed before 1140 was announced. So that's the change. It was a Scottish Government change that drove that.
Andrew?
Thanks, Chair, for letting me in. It was more just to say that I welcome number 3.4.13. It allows St Joe's to become competitive with Inchtenragh with a nursery provision if this was to go through. And I would like to thank the Vice Chair for leading on this through her gift as Vice Chair and bringing this to the committee, because I think it's quite a special issue.
Adam?
Thanks, Chair. It's just 3.1.4. I note that there's to be about 50 million of revenue funding by 2020 to be distributed to councils. Has there been any background work done at either national or local level as to actually how much is required by the PVI sector to deliver a living wage, and will that 50 million pounds and any possible, the whatever amount of money from that we get as a region, will it be enough to allow all the PVI sector to implement the living wage?
That's a very good question, and there's kind of two answers to that. One is we haven't done the work to identify that with the PVI sector, because we have not really into that level of detail. But what I would say would be at the meeting we had with the Scottish Government, or they were attending on Friday, they made a very good point, which I hadn't actually picked up myself, which was that £50 million we're talking about, is they don't only expect the staff who are below living wage to be increased to living wage, but they're also allocating that money in the expectation that the wage differentials would continue as well. So the staff who are below living wage would go up to living wage, but also looking at nursery nurses or managers and supervisors. So we need to understand, and obviously that's up to each nursery, will have its own relationships in there. So it's been clear about what that money is expected to deliver, both at a national and a local level, because it's one thing to say pay a living wage, it's another thing to say pay a living wage and maintain the differentials. So I think we'll need to get further detail out in that before we can really get into that level of detail with the appropriate sectors. We just don't know at this point how that would marry up to what the requirement is.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Would you agree that there is plenty of scope at Minigarth Primary School to accommodate any future expansion?
In terms of primary pupil numbers?
No, I'm talking in terms of nursery.
The assumptions that we're making is around the NAM data that's provided for us, so that's doubling up provision. So if you're familiar with the nursery facility, it's now going from 1 room to 2, so it is effectively doubling the provision there. So that's in line with the national direction on what we should be delivering.
I'm just trying to make the point that Minigarth sits on a very extensive site. There is plenty of open space around the school.
There is, and originally within submission 1, it was looking at providing a new build facility in there that would be a standalone nursery, because there is plenty of space there. However, what this further clarity has provided from the Scottish Government is that we wouldn't be eligible for all of the funding to cover the new build, only half of that, because you're delivering a facility that is catering for the 600 hours plus the additional 540, so you would only get the additional element. So that's driven a change in there. Together with the other numbers originally indicated a higher requirement in the area, which took it beyond 2 classrooms worth of space, physical space. Now that we can find a solution to make that fit within the box of the school, that's the value for money solution to go with. There are other things that were further highlighted from the government in terms of future expansion across all areas. If there are more children through planning development areas or all the other elements, that's not associated with the 1140 funding. That has to be funded through either planning gain or through local authority. It's only when we're looking to double the numbers for the children that we currently have.
Gail?
Thank you, Chair. I'm a bit of a loss. We've had an awful lot of additional information today, which is quite hard to get our heads around. I'm not overly comfortable from a scrutiny perspective of a verbal update telling me that the PVI are okay at £4.01 an hour. That would have been better if we'd had rationale behind it and information in front of us rather than just a verbal update. What I don't understand is why we have an inequity that we can afford to pay £5.17 an hour to council premises, but only £4.01 to the PVI sector, with an assurance that they'll be okay with that. And I think that I have great difficulties in understanding the difference between the provision and why we're prepared to let our voluntary sector go out of business, potentially, because I don't have any information to tell me otherwise.
Well, effectively, this is a report which comes to every SIPL committee meeting. There'll be a further report comes to the March meeting. These negotiations are continuing. Okay. William?
Just to say that I also endorse the whole experience of looking at St Joseph's over in Stranraer, but just to stress there's no such thing as a denominational nursery school. Even though it's attached to St Joseph's, it's not a denominational because there's no denominational nurseries.
Right, I've got nobody else looking to speak, so can we move to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, and can we agree 2.5 to continue to look at the provision in Stranraer? Yep. Thank you. So if we move on to item 6, which is on page 37, property, building, schools, asset class, and this is the regular update which we receive. So this report provides members with details for financial year 2017-18 around current net spend and forecast spend. It also highlights projects with significant change relating to cost, time, movement across financial years, etc., and the range of projects and schools that have seen significant investment. The report also brings to the attention of members the Scottish Government's requirement to review and update condition surveys for all schools. The revised guidance adds additional rigour to the amount and depth of data returned to the Government. The requirement goes beyond visual inspections and supports intrusive investigations if any doubt exists, and also seeks information on operational elements. Finally, the report also highlights the changes to the suitability surveys, which are also a Scottish Government requirement. The revised format adds further clarity on the differences between secondary and primary school use. It now talks about subject areas within a secondary school. Historically, it was all classified as teaching spaces for primary and secondary. One other significant aspect is around capacity. The school pupil numbers are now reflected for how suitable the school is. Before it was the design capacity that was used, i.e. it's now easier to show that the school is not suitable because it's either too big or too small for the number of children that attend. And we have Claire Rent and Lauren Foss to speak to this.
Nothing further to add, Chair. Nothing further to add at the moment.
Right. Members? And can I just say, let's not get too parochial about this. If there are any particular problems with any particular school, can we speak to officers out with the meeting? Right, Jim?
Too late with the parochial thing, Chair. A couple of points. 3.9, it talks about the surveys have been purely visual and not previously been intrusive. I don't think that's right. I thought we were quite proactive in assessing the building structure in more than a visual sense, because I thought we'd invested heavily in some of our schools that we discovered there were flaws, for example, in the wall ties. So I don't think that's maybe right, because we have actually done work on the basis of structural surveys. Second question is, it talks in 314 about the greater emphasis on accessibility requirements. I remember us doing surveys in the schools, and some of the schools require significant investment to bring them up to what you maybe consider to be acceptable accessibility arrangements. Are we now saying that we are going to have to go beyond what we've done in the past? Last thing that I want to talk about, which intrigues me, and I'll know yes parochial stuff, because I'm meeting a member of staff about it next week. But it talks in 316 about it's generally accepted that those best placed to assess the suitability of building, and I suppose each individual class space within the building, are the teachers and service users. I know the first time I've got into a huge debate with members of staff who just resist investment in the school because in their opinion it's no adequate, whereas the school think it is adequate, whereas the school thinks that it's no. And I'd be interested to see how that's going to play out and how much emphasis we're going to put on how the teachers regard the teaching space, especially in schools where we were no fortunate enough to have a £71 million new school. We've got old schools that are dilapidated, and we're trying to make the school experience for all children the same. I'm really concerned that sometimes we don't pay heed to what the staff are saying about condition in some of the learning spaces. And the last point is a point that's bugged me for years. Page 43 is unreadable. I thought we had got to a stage where we were used, is it a 14 or 16 calibre, whatever you call it. You can't see that even with glasses. It's no good sending members a report they can't read, unless that's intentional, of course.
Local government's a young person's game nowadays, Jim. I think gazing around the chamber will appreciate that. Claire, would you like to answer the rest?
Thank you, Councillor. Right, okay, in terms of your last point, in terms of font, obviously we don't want to kill forests in terms of the members' hard copies of the papers going out, but you are sent electronic links as well, but if you're wanting a large print version, happy to provide that. In terms of your first item, in terms of the condition surveys and an intrusive aspect, all of the condition surveys are carried out on an equal measure, and the current guidance and the previous guidance was non-intrusive because the responsibility to try and do an intrusive surveys across the field is too much. What happens is you do the visual survey. If you're given any indication that you may require an intrusive survey, then that's instructed. I think probably the scenarios that you are referring to are probably peculiar to the PPP. So because of the intelligence from the Edinburgh Initiative, we did do intrusive surveys to look at the wall ties, and we did look at isolated schools where we believe there may be an issue. So in those specific scenarios where there was intelligence, there was intrusive surveys. So I think there is some information on that, and that's probably the point you're referring to. But a standard condition survey previously would not be intrusive unless there was any indication to advise otherwise. In terms of accessibility, what the report is saying is that the new guidance is looking and considering accessibility. Accessibility is something that we look at on a case-by-case basis, and obviously we want to make sure that our facilities are as accessible as we can make them. So I don't think there's any more requirement to do it. It's just a continued requirement, and it's certainly important to us across the piece. The next item, which you may allude to, and you've suggested that we do have a meeting next week in terms of specific items, the suitability is a challenge because it is a subjective item, and it will be with the individual head teachers. What we're trying to do, and we've had a lot of experience with this, is make sure the format and approach is the same, but there will be differences in terms of the personalities that you're dealing with and their own views, which is why we as officers will have an overarching view to try and get a level playing field to make sure that we have a consistent approach which benefits the learners. And just to reassure you, in all our aspects, we have the strategic projects, we have the PPP, and we have the the rest of the estate. You know, we are trying to get parity as much as we can within the resources we're given, and certainly we apply a consistent approach to any investment in what we're doing, again, within the playing field that we've got.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Just briefly, I'm pleased about that. It seems we'll get something next week when we meet. But I was actually trying to praise the authority because it was Sanker Academy with extra wall ties in on the basis that there was a cheque made and discovered a flaw in the construction in the 1960s. I wouldn't be too taken with the PPP project because the roof blew off Wallace Hall, a sports hall, months after it was completed. But I was actually trying to praise the authority because we've been proactive in some respects, far more than maybe we should have been, or we were required to, should I say, because it's important that all these schools are maintained to a high standard. So I was just trying to be, without being parochial, praise the establishment, and I look forward to our meeting next week.
Be happy to hear how it goes, Jim. Katie?
Thank you, Chair. I'm also looking at page 43, and first of all, I would just like to welcome the huge investment that was made to the Douglas Hewitt High School in terms of the arts extension to provide music. I've just a slight query on the variance column. It doesn't seem to be a number there, yet the figures on the allocated budget and the net spend and the forecast net spend are different. It's the only column that doesn't, so I'm wondering if that's just a typo that's not been included. So that was sort of my first question, but I did want to say the facility is fantastic. I was with the PTA a couple of months ago and we got a tour, and it's brilliant. It's a really welcomed investment to the town. So it was just that one question, if I could come back on a second.
Yeah, the variance is actually from the total budget allocation to the forecast net spend. So those two values marry. What the actual net spend is, all the bills haven't yet been paid for that project. There's still a few fees to go through it, and once that's all been paid for, it'll add up to the total project value. That's the difference.
Just to jump on to come back on another point. We've got on the top here that all the primary schools have had an upgrade for their door entry and CCT and replacement of radio fire alarm systems, which is great news across all the primaries. Going back to our previous item, in relation to our nurseries that are run within council facilities, can I ask why they've not been included within that? Again, I'm aware that there might be an issue around Penningham Nursery, the new facility that doesn't have an active working fire alarm at the moment, which I have tried to raise, but I would also maybe welcome an offline meeting with you that we can maybe discuss these items and other issues around the over-provision of Penningham School, but maybe that can be done after the committee.
Lauren?
The line that refers to upgraded door entry systems and radio fire alarm systems, that doesn't mean it's happened across all primary schools. That's a budget line there for where there's any that have been identified to require works, and within that it includes all of our schools, whether it's nursery or primary. It's underneath that budget line, and secondary is secondary. And I'll pick up Penningham with you later on.
Jim?
Thanks, Chair. Staying with page 43, did any of the works detailed in the table attract external funding from the Scottish Government?
The projects within the asset class, other than coming down from the grant funding, the general block from the government, there are elements in here where there's been contributions for energy efficiency works, SALEX funding or C funding from within the council as well. So there's not huge pockets of money in there for it. If you exclude things like the 1140 or the 600 hours, it's generally within the general block funding that comes from the government.
My query relates to building extensions. Did any of the extension work attract government funding?
No.
Right. Just generally, the Vice Chair and I have been taking the opportunity to go around and visit various schools right across the region, and really it is very impressive, the investment we've made within the school estate at times of very difficult budgets, and I think it recognises how important the physical environment is not only to learners but also for teaching in these. And I think we are doing all we can at the moment, not just in terms of the big projects like the Dumfries Learning Town and the Dalbeattie Learning Campus, but right across the estates. And Katie made reference to the new extension at Douglas Hewitt, which is jaw-dropping really in terms of the quality of the build and the benefit which the youngsters are getting out of that. So I've got no further indications of speakers, so can we move to the recommendations? So can we note 2.1, 2.2, and can we agree the Council adopt the refreshed guidance from the Scottish Government? And can we agree 2.4 to receive a further report within 18 months on the revised information? Okay. So if we move on to item 7, service redesign, instrumental music tuition. This paper provides information on music provision in primary and secondary schools across the region. Music is provided by class teachers as part of the curriculum. Youth Music Initiative, YMI, which is grant funded and provided by music instructors with the Instrumental Music Service, which is a discretionary service. The IMS has been subject to considerable budget savings over the last 5 years and is not sustainable in its current form. Staff are spread thinly across the region and it is not possible to provide instrumental tuition in all areas, in all instruments. The paper seeks agreement to redesign the Instrumental Music Service to work closer with school music staff and to align more closely with YMI funding. The principal and area model is proposed to maximise the expertise, knowledge and skills of school staff, IMS staff and members of the music community within the areas. The area model will seek to realign YMI funding and explore income generation. The detail of the redesign will be considered within each area over the next few months. Therefore, further recommendations have been added. We'll come to the recommendations in due course. So we have Liz Baxter and
Kate Pickin, who manages the YMI.
Right, to answer any questions, anything you want to add to the report?
Just that this is a national challenge for all authorities with the music service. There doesn't appear to be one size fits all. And every council is looking at redesigning. And that's why, as part of the report, I included the IMS information survey from last year so that you can have an indication of what other authorities are doing. And many of them are using charitable trusts and private enterprises to help deliver the music service. So that's worth considering as we move forward as well.
Members? Katie?
Thank you once again, Chair. Yes, I've done quite a lot of research in terms of the musical instrumental service, and I'm really welcoming that it's getting redesigned. At the moment, the current the current provision that we offer is not doing its job. Our numbers have decreased rapidly, and within the redesign, I would be really welcome to see how we can actually increase those numbers, and I would actually ask that that can be included in there, along with ensuring that the musical instructors are actually properly qualified to give that instruction, because sometimes, with shortages of staff, sometimes members may not, or instructors may not have the specific qualifications. For example, I'm aware at the moment that we don't have any string players, string instrumental instructors in the west of the region. There's no cello teachers. We need to try and find a way to look forward. So I would welcome that within the redesign of the system. So thank you for bringing this forward.
Okay, no further speakers. So can we move to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1, note 2.2, and can we agree 2.3, but with the addition that a detailed report on what's being proposed comes to the May meeting of this committee, which will enable you to produce the detailed report and also to bring it into action in due course. Members happy with that? so I'll take these in one block rather than individually. Okay, members, if we move to item 8, which is on page 131, empowering schools, a consultation on the provision of the Education Scotland Bill, Dumfries and Galloway, the response to the consultation, and as you will note, the consultation closes today, so this is the reason why we need to agree this today, so it gets to the Scottish Government before the deadline. And we have Gillian to speak. Is there anything you want to add further to it, Gillian?
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, members. I have my laptop open and ready, so if you give me the nod, I can upload our consultation response. I think it is important, as we highlight in 3.7, that we, alongside other local authorities, are not arguing for the status quo. We know that there are aspects that we can change in terms of head teacher governance, but I'm confident that that our response both mirrors our approach to ensure local flexibility, but also takes account of the need for local democratic oversight, because that's the risk of going too far along this line. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any amendments.
Just as a note, as a council, we've also contributed to the COSLA, ADES and CMIS responses, which have all gone into the Scottish Government. So, members, Gail?
Thank you, Chair. I welcome the report and I entirely agree with the Council's response. I think it's a robust response, but I think we do need to highlight the issues around local democracy and local accountability, and I think we need to keep banging that nail quite hard. My concern fundamentally is about the timelines. The report, or rather the consultation, was published in November, so when did we receive it? It didn't give us an awful lot of opportunity to really analyse it over the Christmas period. Our schools were off, our leaders within schools were off. We've now got a tight timeline of today to have it back. For something that is as big and as important as this, you would think that a little bit more time to put together a more robust consultation response would be useful. And COSLA only agreed their budget response on Friday, and they represent 32 local authorities. That has come out this morning. We're sitting here. I have sight of it, but no other members of this committee have seen that yet. Leaders haven't seen it. Directors of Education haven't seen it. And I think it would have been better if the Cabinet Secretary had given us a bit more time to align with the COSLA response and to be able to pull things out of that and make sure that we're all sending the same message back, that we want education to improve, but we need to be able to comment robustly. So I would like, if we can, clarification of when we received the consultation. And when we do write back to the Cabinet Minister today with our draft response, just to give him a bit of a kick to say, next time when it's something as important as this, a longer time frame, not over the Christmas holidays, because it looks as if they're burying it and they're just wanting light responses, and I'm not going to be political, I'm absolutely not, would be much more appreciated. I think that the timelines have given me massive concern. And I think the fact that we haven't had an opportunity to analyse the 19 pages that have come out from COSLA today, to embed some of that within our response potentially is not useful. And I don't think the Cabinet Secretary can then say that he's properly listened. I think he's just doing a bit of a lip service consultation at the moment.
Gillian?
We received the notification of the consultation along with the public in November, and due to the timelines for this committee, the papers were due for committee just prior to Christmas. So it has been tight for officers to ensure that we were fully consulted with our head teachers too. However, in November we did share the consultation paperwork with primary, secondary head teachers and parent councils to give them the opportunity and encouragement to respond individually or as a collective, which I know that they have done.
Dick?
Yeah, the response is very good, so I'm quite happy to support that. But I don't know, within it, we could have sort of make a comment on how we should be working with government in the future, because I think that's the thing, the relationship with the government, between us and government and national government should be a partnership, and it doesn't seem to be a partnership. It seems to be one partner taking the lead here and telling us what should happen, where what should be happening is that the government and us should be looking at good practice across Scotland, work with the local authorities and COSLA to come up with a plan for the future which expands on the best practice. I see the role as a government as ensuring that this best practice is shared, that the resources are available to local authorities to make sure that the education system is working, and that there are enough professionals coming through, new teachers are being trained so that we have enough teachers to teach our children in the schools. So perhaps something about the future relationship of working together as a partnership rather than one partner being equal to another. I don't know if that could be phrased somewhere in the response.
June?
Certainly, I know that is the mood of the ADES and the COSLA response, and certainly in discussions with government, we're very keen. We're all working for the same aim here, which is to reduce the attainment gap in children, and so if I can express that, I certainly shall.
And I know from my attendance at the education board meetings at COSLA, that's certainly something which has been emphasised, that this is a partnership. George?
Thanks, Chair. We also, the National Parents Forum and the Dumfries and Galloway Parents Forum have discussed this through focus groups and things like that, so hopefully what I'm going to say is representative of parents across the region. We broadly welcome empowerment of head teachers, but we do have some concerns that it's almost counterintuitive that we're going to regional flexibility and then pushing more power down to head teachers, which is a good thing, but some of our concerns are that the school will depend too much on getting a good head teacher, and we're trying to get equality across all. So one of the things that we would like to promote and stress, and I know that it's been your intention all the time, is to get secondary schools and primary schools to work together collaboratively for the benefit of all. So that's one thing that we would really like people to keep a close eye on, that it's not just having a good manager or leader, it has to go much deeper than that. And on the subject of partnership and collaboration, I agree with Richard, but also on questions relating to parental involvement. It's not factually incorrect what's in here, but there's a lot more nuance to it. And it's a bit of a cause and effect. We would argue that, yes, a large number of parents are more comfortable doing volunteering or running fundraising or cups of tea, but there is an element of the parent population that really do want to get interested and involved in the more educational and business aspects of the school. And we would put a case forward that there's an awful lot of resource there that can be hugely helpful to schools in supporting and in challenging head teachers. So we would argue or promote the idea, and I know a lot of the educational officers have worked really hard on this, to try and develop school councils further. And a way to do that would be to make it more clear where the roles and responsibilities lies, because from our experience, talking to a lot of parent counsellors and parent chairs, is that there's still a kind of invisible line between what a parent council is allowed to do or feel comfortable to do, and some head teachers feel the same. It says that many head teachers have worked hard to work with their school councils. That's true, but I would say some, not many. From our experience, and that's not been overly critical, and it's a fault on both parts, but I think parent councils are going to be even more important with this move towards empowering head teachers, and I think it's really important that we all recognise that and put the resources and effort, including from the parents, to actually work more closely with head teachers and educational officers.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, and obviously there's a huge variation between the way in which head teachers work with their parent council. Some are very supportive, others possibly not as supportive, and vice versa. And I think it also makes reference to the diversity of parent councils as well. I don't know how you enforce diversity. That's quite difficult. Be an interesting exercise, I think, at the end of the day. Colin,
Thanks, Chair. If I could just pick up on a reassurance around collaboration across schools and between schools. I genuinely think that there will be no other authority in the country that has tried harder and works harder on collaboration. If you take into account the huge programme of clustering schools together in terms of partnerships, the number of 2 to 18 facilities and the unique arrangements around Dumfries Learning Town, I think we're really total agreement with you around collaboration. I think that's some of the irony around this, that we've really tried to empower the clusters and partnerships, and that's where there's a little bit of conflict between taking individual schools out in isolation, and that's where we just work through the national agenda as we move forward.
Thanks, Chair. I would like to welcome the tone of the discussion at this committee today. I know for a fact there's a number of us around the room who are bitterly opposed to some of the proposals that are coming from the government. But as Gillian said, none of us are being a flag bearer of the status quo. We do want to see education improve, and essentially we wouldn't be sitting on this committee if we didn't want to see education improve. I think it's very important that, you know, I think we have a really good consultation response here, and I'm pleased that everyone can get behind it, because I do think that we need to ensure that while it's welcome that head teachers have more powers, one thing that has certainly came out and we've got in this consultation response is actually the responsibility that we, through the current legislation in place, give our head teachers, but also in the same time, when issues do arise, we're able to give them the support that they require. I know that, speaking from experience over just the last couple of months, from problems that have arisen in my own schools, we've been able to get solutions in place and work with head teachers, empowering them, but giving them the additional resources required. I do fear that would be lost going through the change in governance that's proposed at the moment. I'm just wondering what the timeline for sort of this legislation is, mainly by the fact that we've also got a paper later on about regional collaboratives that I do believe is actually going to be a part of the legislation that is still to be passed through Parliament, and just wondering if we've got an indication of when this legislation is likely to be passed, and when you know, sort of whatever the legislation that's proposed and enacted will be then carried out.
Jay?
I don't have a detailed timeline for this, although we are informed that the feedback from the fair funding consultation, which was the last consultation, should be this spring. So I think there are a range of papers that will come forward which will be part of the bill. So it's moving quickly, but I can certainly come back to members with a detailed timeline, and potentially COSLA would also be looking for similar.
So can we move to the recommendations, which is just one. Can we agree the Council's response to the Scottish Government consultation empowering schools as set out in Appendix 2? Right. Well, that saves you a lot of work, Gillian. If we can move to item 9, which is on page 185. Which is the Director's 6-monthly assessment of business plan performance, children, young people and lifelong learning. This report provides elected members with the Director's assessment of the 6-monthly progress on delivery of the 2016-18 business plan for children, young people and lifelong learning. It's worth noting there are a large number of exception reports. However, the vast majority are positive exception reports, particularly relating to attainment, which is pleasing. Senior management will present a refreshed business plan for the period 2018 to 22 for committee consideration in due course. Julian McNish, Performance and Quality Manager, is here today to speak to the report, along with Julian and Richard. Should members have any specific questions in relation to the content of the report or associated appendices? Anything you want to add to the report? Or? So I'll throw it open to members. Davy?
Chair, page 199, it's about the CP unpaid work, and it's bottom of where it says level 1 orders are made by the courts. I think that's the same answer we got at the last 6-monthly report, that there's nobody in court the day for the referrals. Surely must be working a better system, because I think that's the same answer we got 6 months ago.
My understanding is we've moved on significantly in the sense that if you look at the top of, this is page 199.
Sorry.
If you look at the top of the page in terms of how we're performing, we're lower at 36%. We've actually moved to 61% in January. So my understanding is that the processes, although the mosaic is still to come full into place, the processes have improved. The overall average for the year isn't showing a big change, but actually this month's been a significant improvement But I'll maybe write to you offline through Lillian Kringles just to confirm that. Okay?
Ronnie?
Just on page 194, there's an exception report about adults satisfied with the leisure facilities. Just wonder if there should have been an exception report in there. Or...
Richard?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Members, my apologies. Yeah, there should have been a reception report on this, and I'll pick that up after the meeting with members. In terms of the detail and the reason why that figure is low, I'm happy to provide an explanation today. And we really suffer, members, as a consequence of the way this data is historically collated. The information comes from the annual household user survey. So this is a very small sample that is sent out to household users throughout Dumfries and Galloway. Those household users might not be users of our leisure facilities, so even if they return it where they're not applicable, that then defaults to a negative response in terms of the way the data is collected. What we're looking to do behind the scenes is to make sure that we've got a range of proxy data available to make sure that our actual users are consulted and asked the question whether they're satisfied, and that information is started to come through in terms of your area committee reporting on a geographical basis.
That makes sense, thank you.
Ros?
Thank you, Chair. I just refer to page 208, where we're looking at the percentage of looked after children who enter a positive destination. And I'm very concerned at the low percentage of positive outcomes for these children. And I'm wondering what happens to the others and what we're doing about that.
Gillian?
Thank you, Chair. I too am concerned it's a 20% drop more than compared to our other pupils who are leaving school. A very positive destination overall with 94%, but it's just not good enough. Although these are small numbers of children, it's been relatively stable over the past 3 years. I have here the report on the analysis of the 2017 annual corporate and parent report, and that's been identified as an area for action. So the Director and I met with the Children's Services Executive Group this morning, and a multi-agency group will be charged with taking that forward and bringing another report forward. It's not something Education Services can do on its own, and certainly we're working with Skills Development Scotland and about employability and skills and the DYW programme to try and improve this.
I'm really happy to hear that there's multi-agency working on this. Thank you.
Dick?
On the exception reports, I always mention the professional development reviews and we're not meeting the targets. So is there any light at the end of that particular tunnel? And in Appendix 2, page 202, the percentage of adults satisfied with local schools is dropping. It says there's a very it's because of a very small sample. What are we doing to make sure that we've got a sample, a meaningful sample, so that we can get an accurate figure for the percentage of adults satisfied with the local schools?
Director?
If I could take the first point about the PRDs, I don't think there will easily be light at the end of the tunnel in terms of the reporting of it. Okay, and the reason for that is we've got more than 3,500 staff in SIPO. And on any given day that fluctuates significantly. So therefore it's very hard to pick up manually. The reporting system we have through iTrent tends to, the way it works at the moment, it picks up I'll give you some examples. It picks up everyone's parts of jobs. So if I've got 3 parts of jobs, and maybe 0.2 in one school, 0.4 in another school, 0.5 in another school, well, that would be hard because that would be 1.1. But anyway, if that were the case, and I got a PRD in one of the schools, it would still show up 2 failings, right? So it counts against all parts of the job. So the way it's recorded at the moment on the iTrent system means there will always be gaps. It doesn't mean it isn't happening. When we've taken samples and gone out to schools, we're finding 100% going on. But we think it's very, very difficult to capture that data, and we don't want to be flippant and say we think it's 100%, so we use the data that we have. But there are a range of issues. We've also got supply staff that might only come in for a couple of weeks, and then it's later on, but they show up in the system, and they may or may not have had a PRD at a certain time. So we genuinely believe, and I keep saying this, we genuinely believe that the staff are receiving the PRDs. The recording's challenging. We'll keep trying to figure out ways to get better at it, but it's the sheer number of staff and the number of fluctuations in the work patterns that make it difficult. And I would go back to one point I think I have made before. I've now been director for 10.5 years. I've never once in 10.5 years had an email or a letter from any member of staff complaining that they didn't get their PRD. So I don't think there's an underlying problem. It's a recording issue. Okay. Second point was, Gillian.
Thank you. It's the same issue as Richard already highlighted, the percentage of adults satisfied with local schools. It has dropped this year. I'd be interested to know how the other reports from the Scottish Household Survey that are reported to this council have also been affected. So it is slightly disappointing, but we don't know if these are actually parents because it's a random small sample that go out to households in Dumfries and Galloway. However, we will be going out again in March for our cross-authority parental satisfaction survey, and I can come back and report that result to you, because those are actually our parents from our schools.
Adam?
Thank you, Chair. A lot of my other points have been taken, although picking up on the point that Ros made about our looked after young children entering a positive destination, I don't know if there's a possible role for the Champions Board to take a role here. For those of us who sit on the Champions Board, and seen a massive improvement in the abilities and the confidence of these young people, and maybe actually speaking to them is a way that we can look at trying to improve this figure, along with the other multi-agency solutions that you talked about earlier.
Certainly would welcome any support you can offer. Thank you.
David?
Hi, thanks, Chair. Just a quickie on that. I looked after children, and it is disappointing that we'll never get 100%, and that's just a fact of life. But what I think we should recognise is that there are some children who've been looked after who go to university and get through university and get a good qualification. My point is way on page 233. It's on about the Ice Bowl here and Ice Hockey World Championships and the work that the staff do in the Ice Bowl. And they do a terrific job in there. And they're doing a lot more work than what is mentioned in this piece that's in here. In December alone, they had 12 curling teams from the 1st to the 3rd of December. On the 7th to the 10th of December, they had English and Irish mixed doubles, so 9 teams making up that. And the time when the Ice Hockey World Championships were on, they also had 20 teams in an international champions tour. So the staff in the Ice Bowl are doing a lot more than just working for one group. They're covering that Ice Bowl, who have a tremendous amount of visitors, and they always get, well, as far as I know, they always get good reports from the visitors, and I think that's very important and encouraging. But I think we need to make sure that when we're talking about the Ice Bowl, we didn't just talk about one sport. And then if we want to talk about one sport, in February they've got synchronised skating, in which there's over 50 teams coming at 14 members a team, plus the hangers-on that come with them. That's a big income for this area. Great for Dumfries and Galloway. Thanks, Chair.
Richard, would you like to comment on that?
No, happy to take on board the comments, Chair, and make sure that in future reports every sport is covered.
Members, if we can move to the recommendations. I think we've reviewed the summary of performance. Happy with that? Scrutinise the exception reporting at Appendix 2. And can we note 2.3 and 2.4 and 2.5? Members? So if we move on to item 10, which is on page 247. This report provides members an overview of key budget monitoring issues and projected performance against budget for the current financial year for the SIPL Committee services based on the position as of the 31st of December 2017. Based on this position, children, young people and lifelong learning services are projected to break even against the 2017-18 agreed budget, with £162,000 of measures to be identified to achieve this position, and it's an improvement from the last reported position. I think it's important to note that 162,000, because of the size of the SIPL budget, is only 0.1% of the total overall budget. And we have Colin Pentland to speak to this. Colin, is there anything you want to add?
Not this time, Chair, no.
Okay, members? Right. That was fairly straightforward. So can we note 2.1, 2.2, 2.3 and 2.4? So moving on to item 11 on page 259. This is the Dumfries and Galloway Active for Sport and Physical Activity Strategy 2018 to 2021. This replaces the Council's previous leisure and sports strategy and sets out how we will work with our partners and stakeholders to contribute to the health and well-being agenda. We know that in Dumfries and Galloway, as in the rest of Scotland, communities are not meeting physical activity guidelines across all ages. Our Council can help to address this, and the strategy sets out how we can achieve this through sport and physical activity initiatives in line with national outcomes and our Council's priorities. The Head of Lifelong Learning and Wellbeing, Richard Greaveson, and Annie Thompson, the Strategic Health and Wellbeing Manager, in attendance, and happy to take members' questions. Anything you want to add to the report at the moment?
No, happy to take members' questions. Chair, through you.
More than a question, Chair. In 3.5 on page 260, it talks about equality and diversity and talks about promote equality of opportunity. Unless we provide the necessary facilities for that to happen, there's little chance. I'm being parochial, but not actually saying it. And again, I'm meeting Claire next week to talk about it. But you know, in the report on page 265, it talks about your region and it talks about 22% of the children only meet the Chief Medical Officer's recommendation of 60 minutes moderate physical activity, and girls only 17%. That's no, I mean, it's no great. And unless we're going to try hard to provide facilities for pupils, there will be no opportunity for them to improve their physical ability and attributes. And I think that's important, recognising that if we've not got the system in place to support these kids, they're not going to do anything much and they're not going to improve. It's parochial, but I'll deal with it next week.
Well, I think if you're not being parochial, David, I think we can, Jim, I think we can note that. David?
Thanks, Chair. I think actually we're to be congratulated, or the staff are to be congratulated. I've been informed that there have been 1,300 youngsters at the Ice Bowl attending curling, get to know about curling. And I was in the Ice Bowl the other day, and there was youngsters playing ice hockey. I'm no kidding, one of the wains I've seen the blocky is as high as these tables. It's that wee bit by rounds could they skate. So there are facilities, we're providing facilities, there's a lot of chance for the youngsters and they're developing on through the services. And the chances are there, and it's just trying to get them all to participate. That's a big problem.
Katie?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wanted to congratulate the team, and also I wanted to just note that I was really pleased that we had a new disability officer in the west of the region. I met with Rory Patton, who is developing BOCA and multi-sports for disability users, and actually his aspirations are really high for the region, and I think that's to be welcomed, and I just wanted to congratulate the team on that appointment. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a brief point on 2.3. Clearly, we're noting that an action plan will be developed. But to me, the strategy is important, but actually the really important bit is the action plan, because clearly that's what we're actually going to do to implement the strategy. Given that progress on that will be reported as part of our kind of rolling monitoring, would it be possible for us to see the action plan here before it's actually implemented?
Richard?
Yeah, certainly happy to do that, Chair, and also it would form the basis of the reporting mechanisms again to the area committees as part of our performance reports. So yeah, happy to keep members involved in both service committee and area committees, Chair.
So when do you think it would come to civil committee?
I would think within the next reporting cycle, we could probably get the first draft to members. So next committee.
Yep. Okay, you've got no one else looking to speak. So, sorry, can we move to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1? Can we approve 2.2? Can we note 2.3 with the addition that this comes to civil committee in the next reporting cycle? And can we agree 2.4? Okay. Yeah. So if we move to the additional paper which came out, members will have received it by post, which is the Southwest Educational Improvement Collaborative. And thank you for agreeing to accept the late paper through myself. The plan was received by South Ayrshire Lead on the 23rd of January, and the plan is due to go to the Scottish Government today. We're pleased that Dumfries and Galloway has taken a lead in the preparation of the plan, and it is fully aligned with our approach where we focus on school leadership and the quality of learning teaching. A full report will be brought to a later committee for ratification once it's been considered by our government. And Director, you want to speak to this?
Thanks, Chair. Not a lot to add other than to say that it maybe picks up on Councillor McGregor's point earlier. There's been a bit of pressure around the timeline here for us. We've tried to be quite pragmatic about it. And that you may recall that the partnerships or which other authorities that we would sit with, it was quite late on that being decided. From that point onward, we've worked really carefully and closely with colleagues in the other three authorities. And what has been helpful, I think, is that they've allowed Gillian and I to take a bit of a lead in writing the rationale. And you might therefore recognise that quite a lot of what we've been trying to do in Dumfries and Galloway is reflected that way. So we're relatively comfortable, though there's a lot of more detailed work to be done. We're comfortable at the moment that it's a direction of travel that you might be happy with, recognising a lot more detail to come, and that we would come back for ratification from members in due course. I don't know if Gillian has got anything to add to that.
No, not specifically, but I just would also like to take the opportunity to highlight that the Standards and Quality Report, a hard copy, is here for your interest as you're leaving the chamber today, but you should be able to see the alignment between the outcomes for improvement in the Standards and Quality Report and what is reflected here.
Members? Adam?
I'm pleased to hear that we've raised the timescale issue. I mean, at 1.2, the fact that this was received from the South Ayrshire Lead on the 23rd of January and needs to be submitted to the government by the end of January. Just by chance, we have a SIPL committee during that 2 weeks. Further on 3.3, it says about the performance reporting cycle. Is that in line with our performance reporting cycle, or is it going to be something that's newly created? I've got another question on page 20, and I see that over the 4 different local authorities at present, as would be expected, is quite a diverse improvement planning agenda, if you like. Over the next, how many other years, that direction of travel, is that going to see these improvement plans sort of streamlined to a more single plan, or will there still be a unique identity? Appreciating the fact that our 120 schools here in Dumfries and Galloway are going to be extremely different to the other schools across the other Ayrshire local authorities. So a little bit of clarity in that would be appreciated.
Thank you, Chair. I'm really clear we have to continue to have a unique identity for Dumfries and Galloway in line with your council priorities. But I think where the 4 authorities have worked very well together is aligning this to the National Improvement Framework. It's been a bit of an organiser for our thinking, because we have to report in those 6 areas anyway. So it's helped us think, what do we have in common? Well, we have to report to the government in these 6 ways. So that's helped us find common ground. But also make sure that members in the 4 areas see their own democratic oversight.
Thanks. Chair, if I could just add to that, members in here are well aware that the officers are not political, and we're recognising that the direction and pull and push that this will go in is a political one, nationally and locally. What we've been trying to do is just in practical terms steer a kind of middle ground. On the point that was raised about the good luck that we happen to have a meeting on the 30th of January, what's happened in the other 3 authorities is I think they happen to have a cabinet system, and so the director for South Ayrshire has gone to each of those areas and reported. I think we were keen through the chief exec and the leader that reporting here would be continued in the same way through this forum. So therefore I think it's a little bit different in the 4 authorities. We're not entirely sure how close it will come together in terms of overall streamlining or not. But I think we're comfortable that we can still do our job here and recognise that some of the collaborative scale could be to advantage if we're quite careful in the use. Okay.
George?
Yeah, just a small point, and I apologise for banging the drum, but one of the parts of the pie chart is parental involvement, so it would be good, wherever appropriate, parental involvement's acknowledged.
Okay. Can we move to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1? Can we agree the initial regional plan 2.2? Recognising this will develop through further collaboration, and once again that the final draft will come to this committee for ratification in due course. And agree 2.3. Okay, members, I'm very pleased to hear you've got no additional business, so thank you for your attendance. I think there may be lunch, but I'm not absolutely certain.